Hey everyone, this is Jack from the Cardboard Herald, and there are a lot of games out there, a lot of really great games out there, but sometimes I think about a game and I'm like, why is that game not more of a household name? Why are more gamers not talking about that game? So today we're going to go over 10 underappreciated games, and my scientific metrics for determining this is based off of, are they under the BGG 500, the top 500, which there are a lot of games. There's 500 games in the top 500, and I think all of these games are better than the majority of the games that are higher. And yeah, I know the BGG rating system is imperfect. It's not the best way of looking at games, and it doesn't account for all the most popular games or whatever, but it's the system that we have, and content creators gotta create content, so it's a system that I'm gonna use. So let's go. Number 10 is Rhino Hero Super Battle. And you may be like, dude, isn't that a Hobbit game? I mean, are kids games even going to be included on this list? And I don't care who made it. Rhino Hero Super Battle is one of the best dexterity games that I've ever played. It is a little bit of a tower building game, and Rhino Hero proper is the game that more people, I think, have heard about, but Super Battle is the sequel. It's the Super Nintendo to the original NES of games, of Rhino Hero games, in which you're building this towering structure with all these platforms and hanging monkeys, and there is a combat element to it, but it's so accessible, it's so infectious, it's easy for adults, it's easy for kids to understand immediately what the concept of the game is, what the fun of the game is, and just having that time to build these enormous towers and see how it all comes together is wonderful. This is a game that if anyone has passed on yellow box Hobbit games specifically because they were like, these are for kids, right? This is a game that you should be considering. Rhino Hero Super Battle is the real deal. The next game on the list is the newest game on this list, which is Khora, a game that released in 2021, is a remake of a Japanese game, and it was released to English and European markets. It is a wonderful economic Euro that's spreadsheety, but in all the best sort of ways, and I can't help but feel that some of the drama surrounding the whole fallout of ILO USA from ILO proper resulted in this being swept under the rug. Not as many people know about this game, but if you like games in which you're building civilizations and you have stats and you have your own unique powers, then this is something worth looking into. It is a very abstract game, and it does consolidate the conceptual elements of a Civ game into a much more manageable 90-minute shell, but it is so elegantly put together and incredibly satisfying. I was flabbergasted that this didn't have nearly as big of a splash in 2021 as I expected. It was certainly one of my highlights from that year. Number 8 is a classic, a banger. It is Medici. It is one of Reiner Knizia's auction trilogy, but the one that I feel is least talked about. Yeah, you have modern art. Yeah, you have raw. But I don't care about those because Medici is, to me, the most streamlined, the most core down to the dirty bones element of the auction mechanics, and I think that this one is kind of getting forgotten to history. There was a great release not too long ago, but is also currently unavailable, that has the Vincent Dutrait artwork on it, which is really great. Has a pretty decent 2-player mode, but the pure distilled game of chicken where you are forcing your opponents into making decisions that they don't want during an auction is so prominent and so delightful here. It is distilled, it is wonderful. It is easily one of my favorite Reiner Knizia games, and one that I do not want to be lost in history. Number 7 is a Spiel winner, and you may be like, how can a Spiel winner be underappreciated, Jack? Well, it's not in the BGG Top 500, so it's on my list. That is Kingdom Builder. You've heard me talk about this game a lot on this channel, and Donald X also made Spiel winner Dominion, which is, it's okay. I mean, yeah, it's revolutionary. It's revolutionary, but as a game, it's okay. Right now, Kingdom Builder, in hindsight, to me, is the much more polished, much more robust game that has all of those elements of great gateway games. But at the same time, I think it just feels much more fleshed out and stands the test of time, even for gamers that have played again and again and again, like I have. I've moved on from a lot of what are considered gateway games, which is kind of a dismissive and icky term the more that I think about it. But Kingdom Builder is a game that I can go back to. There's so much replayability, there's so much versatility, and the simple core mechanic of place your settlements based off of the card that you draw, adjacent if possible, and then undermining that entire concept by removing adjacency through powers or strategic placement is wonderful. Variable point scoring, variable boards, variable powers that are going to come up and become available to you. It's just such a beautiful abstract game. And I mean that literally, not just in the mechanical design, but aesthetically. It is a stunner to look at on the table. Number 6 is Hunt for the Ring, which is in the same line by Ares game as War of the Ring and Battle of Five Armies, and the prominence of War of the Ring has dwarfed its younger brothers immensely, which I think are equally interesting games that are worthy of your exploration. Now, Hunt for the Ring is a hidden movement game, so it completely subverts everything that you expected out of War of the Ring, but aesthetically, it ties it all together, and there are some common elements that transcend the game's different genres, which is really nice. But on top of that, I think that the tools at the disposal of the hunters, the Nazgul, are so incredibly interesting that give this game a cat and mouse a lot more mechanical meat on its bones. It is my second favorite hidden movement game, and it's my first favorite hidden movement game that is complex and robust and like a really meaty experience. It also does some really interesting things, both with the material that it adapts, as well as the structure of the game, splitting it over 2 sessions that are innovative and creative, if making it a little bit more cumbersome for reviewers to say this is a slam dunk game. But I'm telling you now, I think it is incredibly underappreciated. As far as hidden movement games, Middle-earth games, this is definitely in the contention for being among the top. Number 5 is another relatively modern game, which is Fort by Leader Games. This is a re-release or remake or re-envisioning of SPQF, which had come out previously, but this fine-tuned it, changed up some mechanical bits, and then also gave it this brilliant theme of kids playing in a park and having all of the social dynamic of kids who are at war with each other and friends with each other, and the fickle relationships of everything in between as you build up forts and make teams and play games and all that business. It's delightful to look at, and it is also one of the best distillations of deck building that I've played. A genre which, based off of how I was describing Dominion earlier, you may rightly think that I've kind of grown tired of. And yeah, this is a game that is pure deck building. It's not deck building plus something else like Dune Imperium. It's just deck building, but it does it in such a creative and innovative and interesting way, in such a tight package, that it is absolutely charming, and one of the few deck builders that I still break out with regularity. There are a lot of subversions of the genre at this point, but I think this is among the best of them. Number 4, well, when you gotta get your Cthulhu on, which there are a lot of choices now because no one's gonna leave that public domain IP opportunity on the table, well, I think more people need to check out Elder Sign, especially if you're into the Arkham horror, Eldritch horror, the traditional big box Fantasy Flight games line. Well, this is in that line, but it's a dice adaptation of it. And I think that it actually hits on all the best elements of the mechanical design of Arkham Horror and Eldritch Horror, and actually makes it more interesting to play. You're doing a lot more of predictive mathematics and probabilities in order to figure out what you want to try to hit with your dice rolls, what you're going to bring to the table, how you're going to collaborate with other players, that you're not really doing in Arkham Horror and Eldritch Horror. Those are games where things happen to you, and you're just going to react and be like, well, I guess that's how it is. And Elder Sign is a game where you're actually making choices. Yes, there's lots of luck. Yes, there's dice involved, but it takes that same great concept and that great theme and puts you in the steering wheel in a way those games never did. It doesn't have all the story elements, the tons of narrative beats that emerge, but there's enough of that there, and the ambience is stellar, and I think that this is the true best distillation of the traditional non-LCG version of Fantasy Flight's Arkham outings. Were we talking about dice adaptations of games? Because number 3 is Pandemic Rapid Response, my favorite real-time game, hands down. I mean, there are great real-time games out there, but this one is just so great and so much more accessible and enjoyable because it manages to balance the line between wacky fun with that time pressure as well as actually thinking about strategy and collaboration among players. There is a desperation in this game to constantly have that momentum moving forward, and players advising one another as they're taking their turn is one of the funniest and most interesting and most tense things that I've done in a cooperative game in a long time. Of course, games that have these wacky elements, dexterity games, real-time games, they aren't going to be for everyone. So I understand why they're lower on the list, but this is one of those games where I feel like even people who don't like real-time games may actually like this. It really puts you at the helm of every turn. There feels like there's a definitive turn structure. It's not as zany and madcap as a lot of real-time games are, and you feel like you're making important, meaningful choices. I love the game. Rapid Response is great. Number 2 is another relatively recent game, but I think that it's gone under the radar for a lot of people, and that's Small Samurai Empires, which is part of the Small Empires line by Arcana Games, which I think actually does a disservice to how good of a game this is, because it doesn't feel like a distillation, like a tiny package. It feels like a robust game. On the table, it doesn't feel diminutive. It feels like it is a proper game that you're sitting down and playing, and it's a really damn good one. Anyone who is a fan of area control and wants something that feels familiar, but also like it breaks through the tropes of the genre should definitely check this out. It's a concise game playing in about 60 minutes. It plays excellently at 2 players, and the core element where you are doing some action programming that runs through from the bottom of the Japanese archipelago to the top of the Japanese archipelago, and then playing a couple other programming elements, and then running backwards with all of the ones that are still revealed from the first time, and then working your way backwards down the line, is brilliant. It feels really good to execute, and it also feels like there is a lot of tension between you and other players, what you're going to do. Also giving players agency in which regions of the board are going to be the most valuable based off the cards that everyone plays at the beginning of each of the eras is a great way of giving you a dynamic sense of strategy without making things overly messy or overly cerebral. It is one of my favorite area controls of all time, and because of the nature of the game, it feels like an area control game that is great for people who are dedicated fans of the genre and for people who are like, I don't really typically like combative games. So I think you should give it a shot. And my number 1 game that is underappreciated is Whitehall Mystery. This is the second hidden movement game on this list. It is my absolute favorite hidden movement game. It is another game that is kind of like a revision of a previous game. It's from the creators of Letters from Whitechapel, but it's a more concise, consolidated version. And if Hunt for the Ring is this robust hidden movement game with lots of powers and lots of points of interaction collection that you can do. Whitehall Mystery is the consolidated, pure, distilled, good shit. This is all the best elements of the cat and mouse hidden movement game in its purest forms. With an incredibly Spartan design that runs really fast, this game can be banged out in about 60 minutes. It plays excellently at 2, and it plays great at higher player counts. One of my favorite things about it is because there aren't tons of things that the investigator is going to do outside of just movement and investigation and a once per game power. It doesn't feel so overbearing for one player to play the entirety of the investigative crew, making it a great head-to-head game. It has all the suspense and tension that these games are best known for, but makes it all about that cerebral head-to-head interaction that makes these games so good. It's succulent and delicious and terrifying all at once. It's a game that makes me never want to touch Letters from Whitechapel again, because this is all the best things about that game and takes away all of the trimmings that really just made it a longer and more arduous experience. Letters from Whitechapel is great, but Whitehall Mystery is excellent, and I think more people should know about that, and because it's sitting in the shadow of its more prominent older brother, well, it kind of got left down in the dust. So that's it. Those are our top 10 underappreciated games, but I'd love to hear from you. What are the games that you think need more shout outs? What are the games on the BGG under 500 that are excellent games, truly excellent games that need to be much higher? And what are games that came out later on down the road that maybe were dwarfed by an older predecessor, but you think really stole the throne? Let us know in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching, thanks for supporting, and thanks for being awesome. I've been Jack for the Cardboard Herald.